It's been a long time, old one.
Oh, hey Alucard. I'm only 35, but sure, whatever.
I need your help.
Do you want me to make a video about your game?
You won't go unrewarded.
Okay, but try to watch the whole thing this time. Castlevania Symphony of the Night is one of those games that most people have probably heard of or seen at least once in their life. It originally released back in 1997, so it has had plenty of opportunity for exposure over the years, and can be defined as a cult classic. It was not some hidden gem, as I and most everyone I knew was aware of the game back in the day. And while I'm sure that some die-hard Castlevania purists skipped over this entry, it's always been considered above average at a minimum. A quick search will give you some of the direct examples of this game's popularity. This was only helped by the popular Netflix animated series that was not directly based on this game, but clearly took most of their direction for Alucard from this version of the character. As of writing this, I have high hopes for his return in Castlevania Nocturne. So why is Symphony of the Night so dang popular? Well, it is really and truly just that solid of a video game. Let me explain. Symphony of the Night released at a time where a lot of popular franchises and games in general were starting to experiment with 3D polygonal graphics, with varying degrees of success. While clearly this was the direction everything ended up going, there were some great examples of games on the 5th generation of consoles that used the extra processing power to refine 2D art to new and exciting levels. Rayman, Valkyrie Profile, the Mega Man X series, up to a point, Oddworld, and of course, Symphony of the Night. It was all about the detail in these art styles. I really appreciate how these old games took the CRT screens of the time into consideration while making sprites. Dracula looks a bit more menacing when you can't make out the single pixel of red in his eyes this clearly.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets. But enough talk. Have at you!
Now, modern complaints set aside, let's just gush over Symphony's graphics some more. They really put extra effort into all of the art for this game, from the various levels of the castle to the enemies that fill it. Symphony of the Night utilizes parallax scrolling to help achieve depth. You see this in the opening scene of the game to demonstrate Alucard's speed, but another standout to me has always been the marble gallery and the giant peeping eye that floats around outside. When I was a kid, I was convinced I could either get out there or let it inside if I could only find the secret. Alucard himself is animated fluidly with his smooth running frames and stoic poses. If you're standing near a ledge and hold up, he will even pull his cape around for a good brood. These details even carry through his transformations, such as his weapon belt on the wolf, or how his cape color is reflected on the bat. More on Alucard's status as a furry in a bit. That last one gives some extra fun to the item Joseph's Cloak that is for sale in the Long Library, as it allows you to set the color of your cape with RGB values. Each enemy in this game sees the same level of attention, with most of your classic Castlevania enemies returning, such as skeletons, bats, and the various undead, but Symphony outdoes itself with enemy placement and even combo tactics. Slogra and Gaibon are some vintage monsters that will work together to take down Alucard, and while they stand out as a boss, they're not alone. The game will be downright devious sometimes, such as a room with a strong knight enemy up front, and several archers or riflemen behind him just picking away at you. While this can be a daunting challenge, I promise you that Alucard is up to it. Symphony of the Night also tread new ground by introducing light RPG mechanics to the franchise. Alucard will collect EXP and gear from fallen enemies as you play through the game. I use the term light RPG mechanics because you can't really grind until you're OP in the traditional sense. Most of your power creep comes in the form of new weapons and secondary abilities that just grant you new options for the game's many foes. Something like a double jump is not just for exploration, as Alucard does come from the old school of video games and will go flying upon taking a hit. Being able to jump back out of the way really helps. There are 13 distinct named sections of the castle, and each one of these feature unique designs with various set dressings to help reinforce the spooky Gothic atmosphere. There are epic paintings, tortured souls, and several illusions of depth. A couple of transition screens in the Long Library imply that it is much larger than we get to explore. So the game looks good and runs well. And while that is great and all, it doesn't guarantee success. Castlevania games up to this point had been mostly level-based affairs that featured minimal checkpoints and an arcadey action focus. It was always a standout with stuff like branching pathways and secret chicken hidden in walls, but you mostly moved forward and typically had all of your main abilities right up front. The team that worked on Symphony of the Night have openly discussed their influences, which included The Legend of Zelda and other non-linear games, and how that inspired them to try something different. Symphony was originally planned as somewhat of a side story for the series, which freed these developers up to break series traditions. The infamous Koji Igarashi told the media that he felt regular action games were too short, and he wanted to create a game that could be enjoyed for a long time. Boom, open world. Main character does not have to be a Belmont? Well, now you can use swords, rods, daggers, and fists. Made by a team with love for the Castlevania series, then you keep fantastic old systems such as sub-weapons powered by hearts, and everything is starting to come together. The internet defines Metroidvanias as a subgenre of action-adventure games and/or platformers focused on guided non-linearity and utility-based exploration and progression. Which means big maps that require backtracking once you have new abilities that are unlocked by exploring the areas that you can access in the beginning. On and on exponentially with your imagination and file sizes as the limit. The word is obviously inspired by the Castlevania and Metroid games, but Symphony is the one that really locked it in. The game excels at showing you an area that you cannot access yet, maybe you can't jump high enough, or maybe it is something more direct like mist could pass. In terms of movement abilities, I already spoiled the double jump, but Alucard also gains a moon jump with a button combo to activate, and his previously mentioned transformations. He is able to tap into his dark powers to transform into 3 different forms throughout the game, each unlocked as you explore. These are his wolf form, bat form, and mist form. They all start out pretty basic. Mist can only move a small amount before turning back, for example, but will eventually be upgraded with unique abilities. The wolf can run super fast through enemies, usually ending with a satisfying crunch as you crash face first into something. The bat will learn to shoot fireballs and use echolocation to see in the dark, and mist form can be sustained and will eventually become poisonous to enemies. All of these transformations are powered by Alucard's mana bar, which will slowly refill on its own, and you can stay transformed pretty long later in the game. Clearing a dense hallway with poison mist can be pretty satisfying. If you or a loved one have been forced into undeath by poisonous vampire gas, call now. You may be entitled to compensation. The echolocation ability for the bat is an interesting one because it's required to access the best ending and secret second half of the game, but is really kind of boring outside of that one niche puzzle. You can get another upgrade later that makes it hurt enemies, but since any damage knocks you out of your transformation, it's situational at best. Did I say secret second half of the game? Why yes. Yes I did. Symphony of the Night will allow you to play it for hours, and only ever hint that there may be more to the story than stopping the renegade Belmont at the top of the castle. If you do follow those hints or use a guide, no judgment here, you will eventually learn that there is more at stake. Now, I admit that the game does not do the greatest job pointing this questline out, but I found this stuff as a kid just by exploring more and more. I had figured that the final boss was in that room at the top, so I wanted to go back and fill out the map before that point. Then one thing leads to another, and suddenly you're fighting Shao. With a few well-placed hits, you will temporarily defeat this evil wizard and free Richter Belmont. Right about now, the game reveals that there is an entire inverted castle above the one you just finished tomb raiding. That's right, double the castle, double the fun. With this entire new playground open, the game takes off the kid gloves. And I'm not here to walk you through room by room, but suffice it to say that there's a reason the inverted castle starts giving out life and heart upgrades like candy once you arrive. You will face foes here that were bosses in the normal castle, like our friends from earlier, Slagra and Gaibon. Push through this challenge, and you can see the true ending to Symphony of the Night, and rest knowing that you put Dracula down for good, or at least until the next game in the series. Alucard will have access to various tools and weapons on his quest to reach the dark heart of the inverted castle, showing a strong preference for swords overall. This alone is one of the biggest departures from tradition, and surprisingly the only way to use a whip is to play as Richter in one of the secret New Game Plus modes. Earlier I talked about the moon jump and that it requires a button input to perform, but there are actually a few other interactions like this hidden in the game. Maybe not hidden, but definitely not told to you directly. Some of the weapons you can find do a little skill or move just by performing a rolling down forward Hadoken style input. The unique shield rod weapon is famous for its ability to combo with the various shields in the game and grant you temporary buffs such as elemental resistances or stat boosts. This even extends to the various magic spells that Alucard can use. Did I mention he can cast spells? By inputting different button combos like a fighting game, all spells are secretly available right from the start. The only limit is having enough MP to cast them. Pro tip, learn how to use Soul Still and never die again. The weapons are mostly hidden in set areas, which means you can target them once you know where they are, but some are only available as enemy drops. This is completely RNG dependent and can really grant you some early power boost if the right thing drops. On my most recent replay for this video, I had the Heaven Sword drop from the first Cloak Knight enemy I encountered, and it really sped things along. Nothing like sitting back and just chucking a sword into their face over and over. If you're a fan of this game, it is almost required that you farm a Chrysogrim for a victory lap at least once in your life as well. This is a weapon that completely breaks any and all challenge. You pretty much hold down the attack button and win. So beware of that as well, I guess. If you equip that weapon, easy mode is active. Alucard does also collect armor and accessories, but these typically have less of an impact on moment-to-moment gameplay. Not as noticeable as swapping between the Jewel Knuckles versus the Red Rust. Using all of this gear in conjunction with the movement abilities will be all you need to take on the multitude of bosses waiting for you throughout both castles. Too many to list here, but a couple of standouts to me were Galamoth, Grand Falloon/Legion, and the fake heroes fight in the Reverse Coliseum. I want to keep a few things mysterious just in case someone has not played this yet. This baseline of mechanics probably would have worked with almost anything, to be honest. It's always hard to say stuff like this definitively due to the power of hindsight and comparison, but Symphony of the Night would have been a great game even without the brand recognition that came with the Castlevania title. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night kind of works both ways in this argument, as that game has some really fun moments, but is almost impossible to not view through a Symphony of the Night themed lens. I guess my point is that without Symphony of the Night to put the Vania in Metroidvania, the subgenre might have been called something totally different today. Tell me your speculative name for the genre down in the comments. Just that. Let's try that old confusing comment thing people used to do. Mine is Zeldroid. Castlevania Symphony of the Night remains one of the best video games of all time to this day. Flat out. Yes, this entire video exists to sing its praises. If you were waiting for some kind of twist moment, I don't have one for you. Seriously, it is that good in my opinion. The most I can do is admit that the overall genre of faster-paced action might not be for everyone, but just because I don't play life sims doesn't mean that I can't acknowledge something like Animal Crossing for the impact it had. Check it out if you have ever even considered it, and even if it isn't your first time with the game, maybe give it another playthrough for old time's sake. Thanks for clicking on this video, and extra thanks if you made it this far. I really appreciate your time, and it is rather exciting to watch the channel grow. Do all the usual stuff if you're up for it, like the video and whatnot. Please consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. I still have a day job for now, so while I can't tell the exact date of the next video, I will promise you that it is coming. It takes me about a week or two right now. Consider checking out one of my other videos in the meantime, and thanks just one more time for watching. I've been Dr. Ursa, and until next time, take care.